Good morning. My voice audible to you?
Good morning,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good morning. I was waiting. People are still joining. That's why I was waiting for them. We have tariffs. We have dumping, anti-dumping. Then we have economic integration in this unit. I'll complete it today. So, okay. So we'll start the class. Uh, in this uh, in this unit, we have three important things to discuss about. Something called as your tariffs, something called as dumping and anti-dumping. Then we have something called as economic integration. This is all related with your trades. So when I say tariff, tariff is basically a tax or a duty which is levied on goods when they enter or either they leave the national boundaries. And in this sense, when we say tariff, it basically refers to your import duties and export duties. But for the practical purpose, we say like a tariff is which is almost synonymous with import duties or custom duties. Like for example, if you are buying some kind of foreign goods that too you have purchased outside the national boundary, but when it makes an entry into the national boundary, a particular tariff is being put on that product. Now when we talk about tariffs, there are different type of tariffs, like it has been classified in a number of ways, like on the basis of purpose. There is something called as a revenue tariff or a protective tariff. When it is a revenue tariff, it means like it basically means to provide the state with revenue. Revenue duties are given on luxury consumer goods, and the lower the import duties, the larger is the revenue for them. For any good where the import duties are less, the revenue is more. So in this case, this type of products, this is because like the rise in price of the imported goods does not increase much with the imposition of low import duties. But the consumers, they normally shift their demand to other domestically produced goods. Why they have done as such? It is because like if you are importing certain goods, and that too luxury consumer goods, if you are putting a lower import duty on them, then the revenue earned from them will be very larger. In that case, what a consumer will do is, instead of going for purchasing of those commodities, they will generally go in purchasing some of the commodities which are domestically produced. So those are called as your revenue tariff. Second is your protective tariff. Protective tariff is where you are trying to maintain and encourage those branches of home industry, and it is protected by duties. Now, like if you see the government, it puts import duties on some certain principal objects so that it discourages imports, and it moreover tries to encourage the domestic production. For example, your handlooms and textiles. So in case of handlooms and textiles, government wants that the domestic production as well as the domestic consumption of those textiles should increase. So if you are going to export those things, or if you are going to import foreign clothes, some foreign cloths or foreign cloths in that matter, so we have a very higher, like we put our import duties on them, and as a result, import of those goods are almost nil. Like for example, electronics product also, they in those cases they have a higher import duty. In case you are purchasing any kind of automobiles like sports car, sports cars. So in those cases also they have a very higher import duties. As a result, it is just to safeguard the domestic production as well as safeguard the domestic consumption. Now, this tariff is divided into other types in terms of duty. Like there is something called as ad valorem duty. There is something called as your specific duty, compound duty, and sliding scale duty. When it is an ad valorem duty, it is basically a very common type. It is given on, or it is used basically on the percentage of the total value of the imported commodity. Like the imported commodity is a fixed percentage. Like in case of calculation of import duty, it is basically cost plus insurance plus freight value of that commodity. So in that cost plus insurance plus freight value, it might be like 25% or 50% of that CIF, cost, insurance, and freight value. That is called as your ad valorem duty. Then we have something called as your specific duty. It is on a physical unit of the imported commodity. For example, we put a particular, say, rupees X for a TV, or we put rupees X for per liter of oil, or we put rupees X for like per meter of cloth, or we put rupees X for per ton of fertilizer. Whatever import we are putting, it is on the basis of one physical unit. Then we have compound duty. Compound is actually where a combination of your ad valorem plus specific duties. Like in this case, आपका जितना भी cost, insurance और freight value वो commodity पे है. Suppose we are talking about a commodity called as X. So the compound duty will be a particular percentage, like 25% of your cost, insurance and freight plus a specific duty, or we say like rupees Y और for this commodity X per unit of commodity. तो ये जब combine हो जाता है उसको compound duty बोलते हैं. I'll give you another example here. Like for instance, we talk about a country. It may impose a import duty on a car. And the fixed rate will be rupees 1 lakh, rupees 1 lakh per car plus 10% of the price of that car. जो भी प्राइस है उसका 10% लगेगा, उसको कंपाउंड ड्यूटी बोलते हैं. Then there is something called as a sliding scale duty. When it is a sliding scale duty, it is here like sometimes the government, it puts the import duties and it vary according to the prices of the commodities that is imported. Like if you are importing a car, then the import duty of that car will vary when we are importing TV, or when we are importing phones, or when we are importing watches. So it depends upon the commodity that we have. It depends upon the kind of the amount of commodity that we are importing. So that is what your tariffs are. Tariff is, this tariff can be better understood in terms of your consumer consumption. This tariff can again be divided country wise. Like when it is a country wise, there is something called as a single column tariff or a double column tariff. When it is a single column tariff, okay, when it is a single column tariff, here a uniform rate of duty is imposed on all similar commodities. For example, if you are going to bring TV, so the import duty is on TV. Like whatever TV we are going to bring on, there is a single uniform rate. 10% of the cost of TV is your single column tariff. When it is a double column tariff, it is like two different rates of duty exist for some of the commodity. Like there are some government, like there is a government of that country, it may declare that both the rates will be applicable, like something at the beginning and something when it is settling up. Like when we talk about double column tariffs, it might be like something called as a maximum tariff and a minimum tariff based on from which country we are importing. Suppose like we are importing some commercial goods and we have a commercial agreement or treaty with a particular commodity, then we particular country, then we have a minimum tariff that is imposed on them. On the other hand, if there is a if there is rest of the country, we have a maximum tariff imposed on them. For example, in today's case, if we are importing something from China, we have a maximum tariff imposed on it. If we are importing something from Bangladesh, if we are importing something from Sri Lanka, we have a minimum tariff levied on it. Then there is something called as a general and conventional tariff, which is announced by the government. It is on the annual tariff basis. It's very conventional. Like it is a very general for irrespective of whichever countries the thing has been brought into, irrespective of whatever products that has been brought into. Then there is something called as your multiple or triple column tariff. Multiple or triple column tariff is, for example, currently if we are talking about, if you are importing anything from the SAARC countries, then you have to pay a preferential duties on imports of each other. For example, अगर हम सार्क कंट्रीज से अभी ट्रेड कर रहे हैं, तो इंडिया से जो भी गुड्स वहां पे जाएगा, देयर इज अ पर्टिकुलर काइंड ऑफ टैरिफ दैट इज गिवन, दैट इज पुट ऑन दोज प्रोडक्ट्स. इंडिया दूसरों कंट्री से जो चीजें लाएगा उसका ऊपर और एक टैरिफ प्लेस होता है. मतलब इट इज मल्टीपल और इट इज इन अ काइंड ऑफ लाइक डिपेंड्स अपॉन द कंट्रीज, कौन बेसिस में कहाँ पे जाता है वो टैरिफ एस्टेब्लिश हो जाता है. देन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ रिटेलिएशन एक टैरिफ लगता है. एक है रिटेलिएटरी टैरिफ और एक है काउंटरवेलिंग टैरिफ. इन केस ऑफ रिटेलिएशन इट इज बेसिकली पनिश करने के लिए दिया जाता है. लाइक अ रिटेलिएटरी टैरिफ इज गिवन बाय वन कंट्री ऑन द इंपोर्ट्स ऑफ अनदर कंट्री टू पनिश, like this is the harmful for its exports, or there is a balance of payment kind of situation which is happening. अगर आज हम पाकिस्तान से कुछ लाते हैं तो हम एक रिटेलिएटरी टैरिफ पे करते हैं. एक्चुअली हम कुछ नहीं लाते हैं, उससे पूरा बंद है. बट अगेन इफ यू आर ब्रिंगिंग ऑल योर नो डेट्स वगैरह जो हम लाते हैं अपना मिडिल ईस्ट से, देयर इज अ रिटेलिएटरी टैरिफ दैट इज बीइंग एस्टैब्लिश्ड ऑन देम. देन देयर इज अ काउंटरवेलिंग ड्यूटी. काउंटरवेलिंग ड्यूटी मतलब इट इज एन एडिशनल ड्यूटी व्हिच इज imposed on the commodity, and this additional duty is to just to raise the price and to protect the producers of the same commodity when we are bringing it into the country. For example, wines वगैरह जब हम लेके आते हैं, ड्रिंक्स वगैरह जब हम लेके आते हैं, तो वहां पे काउंटरवेलिंग ड्यूटी लगता है, जस्ट टू discourage that bringing those products into the country is just going to be just going to hamper the business of the people who are domestically producing it. Now what are the effects of this tariff? Like इक्विलिब्रियम सिचुएशन होता है. इक्विलिब्रियम सिचुएशन में कैसा होता है, एक प्राइस इफेक्ट रहता है, डिमांड एंड सप्लाई ऑफ दैट कमोडिटी होता है, एंड उसके ऊपर वो बहुत what do you say, it has a major impact. Like एक competitive effect हो जाता है, domestic industry has to compete against the foreign industry. Then there is an income effect that happens, like when you are bringing into, like आप tariff impose कर देते हो, the level of income and employment of the country takes a toll. Like आप कुछ चीजें you are not producing, but then you are importing it. तो at a certain point your आपका जो employment opportunities है वो fall कर जाते हैं, आपका income fall कर जाता है, balance of payment effect होता है. Balance of payment is basically where you are increasing tariff, reducing tariff, उसके ऊपर आपका balance of imbalance हो जाता है. So that is all about your tariff. Tariff is actually related with all kind of welfares, and it is just an income for the government. Now we go and study something about something called as dumping and anti-dumping. So when I say dumping, okay, when I say dumping and anti-dumping, let me first tell you what is an anti-dumping. Anti-dumping क्या होता है? Like it is a duty which is actually imposed on the goods that are manufactured in foreign countries and imported to us. For example, suppose we talk about a good that has been produced in US and it is imported by India. So when this kind of imports happen, they have a very lower price than what like they have a very lower price and the value of lower price than the value of similar goods in the domestic market. For example, we are bringing steel to India. Steel is somewhat which is manufactured in say UK, or steel is somewhat which is manufactured in China, and we are trying to bring it inside India. India के अंदर भी steel produce होता है, but when we are importing those steel, the price of those steel produced in those foreign countries is very less than the price of steel that is produced in the domestic market. So what happens over here is the government here imposes anti-dumping duties on imports. Now when we talk about anti-dumping duties on imports, here the basic reason is to believe that the goods are being dumped into the domestic market because of their low pricing. जो गुड्स हम लाते हैं, जो यूके हमें स्टील दे रहा है, जो चाइना हमें स्टील दे रहा है, इट इज बिकॉज दे आर जस्ट डंपिंग इनटू आवर मार्केट बिकॉज ऑफ द लो प्राइसिंग. So in case of anti-dumping duty, what we do is we are protecting the local businesses, we are protecting the markets from unfair competition by the imports. This anti-dumping and dumping a very major role, like when it comes to businesses and when it comes to businesses, basically like जब हम बाहर से लाते हैं, अंदर हमारा प्रोडक्शन है, बट जब हम बाहर से लाते हैं, this anti-dumping is something which is very harmful for our country. Now let's understand what dumping is. See, what happens in case of dumping, it enables the consumers in the important countries to obtain access to goods at an affordable price. Now, when we are like India में cell phone markets अगर आप देखोगे, mobile phone markets अगर आप देखोगे, there are products which are available, which are produced in India, but then there are products which are easily available from like Chinese market. In that case, we buy a smartphone at 10,000 rupees, which has all the characteristics of a cell phone, which is available in the domestic market at 30,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees. So that is what your dumping is. Like here basically the multinational companies, they practice international price differentiation. Like for them, the product that they are making, it has to be something which the consumer can afford. For example, if you'll see Tide detergent, जो आपके इंडिया में Tide detergent मिलता है, that Tide detergent is in China is sold for less than 1/5 of the US price. Like US में अगर the price of Tide is $6, so in China that Tide detergent is available for only $3 in Chinese economy. So here it is a dumping kind of situation. Like if a particular country it is willing to pay more for a product, the MNC will price the product at a higher cost. In US, people can afford to buy Tide for $6. So the company, being an MNC, it tries to sell that Tide in $6. In China, people will not be able to buy it for $6. So it has placed the price in $3. Now, when we talk about anti-dumping and dumping, we again understand why this anti-dumping is important. Anti-dumping duties are typically given when a foreign company sells an item at a very significantly lower price than the price at which it has been produced. Like in many cases, the duties imposed on those goods exceed the value of the goods. मतलब जो goods हम produce किए हैं, the cost of those goods is 10 rupees, the duties imposed on those goods is 20 rupees. The very primary intention of anti-dumping duties is, अगर हम anti-dumping करते हैं, we are not talking about dumping. Anti-dumping is, we are basically here to save the domestic jobs. Like when we talk about these tariffs, tariff sometimes leads to a very higher price for the domestic consumers. So here the domestic consumers will not be able to afford those foreign goods. So in return, what they will do is they will go back and they will try purchasing the domestic goods. The long-term benefit of anti-dumping duties is it will reduce international competition of domestic companies producing similar goods. Like local enterprises, they very much rely on these anti-dumping laws, and they basically deal with unfair competition from imports, and they sell their products at a market value. Now, if you know Titan and Timex. Titan is one brand which is produced in India, like it is a core domestic product brand. If you know Timex, it is one of those brands which is the brand itself is US. Now, if you see sports watch category, if you see Titan, you will get the minimum cost of a sports watch in Titan category is somewhat around 7,000. A minimum sports watch cost in a Timex category is 2,000. Okay, so if you are going to buy a Timex watch for 2,000 rupees, here you are paying 2,000 to the brand of Timex, which is not Indian, which is not domestic produced. Rather, when you are paying 7,000 to a Titan buying a sports watch for a Titan brand, here you are paying it to Titan, which is a domestic brand. So in order to counter those competitions, what Titan has come up with? Titan has come up with a very low cost watch segment called as Sonata, where if you are going to buy a sports watch, it will cost you somewhat around 1,500, hardly 2,000 rupees, just to counter to Timex. Now, when we talk about dumping, there are different types of dumping. Something called as sporadic dumping, predatory dumping, reverse dumping, and persistent dumping. Now, what is a sporadic dumping? Sporadic dumping is the companies Oh, if they have an excess of inventory, so in order to have a price war in the home market, they protect their and to protect their competitive position, they dump. They either destroy their extra supplies, जो extra supply होता है वो उसको destroy कर देते हैं, नहीं तो वो क्या करते हैं, foreign market को छोड़ देते हैं, where the products are currently sold. It is a very temporary strategy. Sporadic dumping is basically when you find excess of say foreign hand washes in the market, when you find excess of foreign creams in the market, that is called as your sporadic dumping. There is something called as your predatory dumping. It is a very permanent strategy. Here the company regularly sells the product in the foreign market but at a very lower price than the domestic market. The company here sells the product at a loss just to gain entry and destroy the local industry, and once it gains some monopoly in the foreign market, it slowly starts to increase the price. This is what China actually does with us. There is a persistent dumping, like when a country regularly sells product at a lower price in the foreign market than the domestic prices. It is called persistent dumping. It generally happens when there is a constant demand for the product in the foreign market. The best example is all kinds of Western apparels. When there are Western apparels are available, we kind of forget our domestic handloom thing. We always go for buying of these foreign brands. Then there is something called as your reverse dumping. Reverse dumping happens when the price changes do not have an impact on the demand. Like here, the company can charge a higher price in the foreign market and lower price in the local market. It is called as your reverse dumping. Like India may, like if you are going to produce handloom kind of things, when it goes to the foreign market, it is sold at a very higher price, very higher price. But when it is sold in the local market, it is sold at a relatively lower price than the higher price that is being sold in the foreign market. That is called as your reverse dumping. Now, how does this anti-dumping thing that happens? Like anti-dumping is basically the Internal Trade Commission, WTO basically. It ensures like all anti-dumping laws are strictly enforced. Like every department of commerce has to go through, like you have to understand, like any point of time the domestic market is not compromised at any point of time. आज के जमाने में इवन इफ यू आर बाइंग समथिंग, लाइक अगर आप मिंत्रा में भी जाओगे, इफ यू आर गोइंग टू बाय समथिंग, आप वो फिल्टर में देखो, फिल्टर में देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड एज कंट्री ऑफ ओरिजिन आ जाता है. कंट्री ऑफ ओरिजिन मतलब if you are placing the country of origin as to your home market, it means you are basically producing, you are basically buying your goods from your domestic market. If you are not choosing your country of origin, it means like all the products that you are seeing in that Myntra, all the products that are available in the Myntra, they're either from the foreign market or either they are made in some other place and being sold here. For example, if you'll see, there are very यही आपको यही साइट्स, जो आपके ई कॉमर्स साइट्स है ना, ई कॉमर्स साइट्स के बात ही बता रही हूँ. अमेज़न में एक प्रोडक्ट ब्रांड है कॉल्ड एज मिनीसो. आई डोंट नो इफ यू नो और नॉट. मिनीसो बोल के अमेज़न में एक प्रोडक्ट ब्रांड है. दैट प्रोडक्ट सेल्स वेरी क्यूट काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स एंड वेरी नाइस थिंग्स ऑल्सो. लाइक व्हेन इट कम्स टू quality wise, it is also very nice, but then it is much lower price than the domestic market things. Now that Miniso is a Chinese brand. वो Chinese brand है. Suppose if you put your country of origin as your home market, as an Indian market, you will not get those things. उसका जो बैग्स वगैरह रहता है, उसका जितने भी फैशन प्रोडक्ट्स रहते हैं, इवन होम अप्लायंसेस भी जितने रहते हैं, those are of very good quality, and we also prefer buying because if we go to the domestic market, we buy the same thing at a very higher price. Now I'll give you some of the examples of how anti-dumping has happened. Like आपको अगर ये पता होगा कि नहीं, लाइक डू यू नो देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड एज फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले. आपका जो टीवी होता है, फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले स्क्रीन्स रहते हैं. आपका जो मॉनिटर रहता है वो फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले होता है. पता है क्या आपको फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले क्या होता है? पता है क्या फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले क्या होता है? आपका जो सिस्टम्स होते हैं, आपके जो टीवी होते हैं, वो उसमें फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले है. लाइक इट इज समथिंग व्हिच वाज एक्चुअली इन्वेंटेड बाय द जापानीज कंपनीज, एंड ड्यूरिंग द 1990s दे स्टार्टेड डंपिंग देम इनटू, लाइक उनका जो फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले जो रहता था ना उनके मार्केट में भरने के बाद दे स्टार्टेड डंपिंग इट टू ऑल अदर कंट्रीज एंड जब वो डंपिंग करने लगे so at the certain point of time there was a material damage also, there was a material damage to all the domestic companies. Domestic company में जैसे कि Philips, आपका ओनिडा, वो सब बहुत like those people suffered a lot. जब फ्लैट पैनल डिस्प्ले मतलब आपका जो टीवी था वो बहुत पतला होने लगा था और अगर आपने देखा होगा टीवी बहुत बड़े बड़े आते थे, इतने बड़े बड़े टीवी आते थे, उसका स्क्रीन जो रहता था वो रिलेटिवली छोटा रहता था बट एज अ टीवी जब बोलते हैं तो उतना बड़ा टीवी आता था. So this flat panel display started somewhat during 90s when Japanese they started dumping it across whole world. तो जितने भी producers थे, like there was a TV producer called as Konark, there was a TV producer which was called as Onida, Philips. They found it very difficult to be in the market. वो market में रहने के लिए बहुत मुश्किल हो गया था. Like अभी के situation में अगर देखोगे MI का टीवी देखो, MI बोल के एक ब्रांड है, पता है ना आपको? आपको पता है ना सबको?
Yes,
MI
ma'am.
बोल, हाँ, तो MI का टीवी
Yes,
का,
ma'am.
yes, MI टीवी देखो, like in 15,000 you will be getting a TV which is similar to what you will be purchasing in 35-40,000. So that is what your dumping is happening. Like similar way, there was Chinese companies in 2015 they started dumping the steel. Like जब स्टील डंप करने लगे इन डोमेस्टिक कंपनीज दे स्टार्टेड कंप्लेनिंग, वो डोमेस्टिक कंपनी स्टील जितना रेट में बेच रहे थे ये चाइनीज कंपनी उससे कई गुना कम रेट में स्टील डंप करने लगे. एंड टू दैट, to retaliate that, the government imposed 500% import duty if you are importing steel from China just to protect the domestic steel market. And there are certain examples of bikes also, certain examples of automobiles, सेरामिक टाइल्स भी जो रहते हैं वो उनके ऊपर एंटी डंपिंग ड्यूटीज लगे गए हैं. Now what role does WTO plays in this anti-dumping? This WTO, it plays a very crucial role in regulating the anti-dumping measures. Like as an international organization, what does this WTO does is it regulates the brands, and if at all there is any complaint about dumping activities that is happening, so the government, WTO gives all its suggestions to the government to handle the dumping activities in the country. Like there have been instances where some of the governments they have very aggressively reacted for the dumping of goods. Not Indian government, of course. Like they have very aggressively react to the dumping of the goods in their territories. So here WTO steps in, it checks like whether the actions are justified, and if the actions are found to be wrong, so WTO goes against those countries and gives them a charges them a certain kind of what do you say, certain amount of money as a punishment. So according to WTO anti-dumping agreement, dumping is legal, but then it is unless until it is creating a material injury. Unless and until it is creating a material injury to the domestic market. So WTO takes sufficient proof of whatever the genuine material the company is dumping or anti-dumping, and it also brings out all kinds of anti-dumping measures or unilateral remedies. It involves in taking actions. It involves it also tries and understand like why anti-dumping has happened, any kind of interventions that happen, and how the anti-dumping methods are calculated. Like according to WTO, there are 3 methods of calculating anti-dumping thing. Like the first method calculates anti-dumping duty based on the normal price of the product. The second technique is here the price charged on the identical product is in a different country. And the third method is where it calculates the total product cost, expenses, and the manufacturer's profit margin. So this is what your WTO does. This is all about your dumping and anti-dumping. Next, we will read about your agreement, regional trading agreements. So when it is a regional trading agreement, it is where a treaty is signed between 2 or more countries so that there is a free movement of goods and services happening across the border. Like India has signed regional free, like it has trade agreements with 70 countries. When it comes to agreement, it comes with certain internal rules that member countries that have to follow. Like when you are when you are dealing with non-member countries, there are certain external rules that you have to follow. So whenever it is a regional trade agreement, there are different types of regional trade agreement. The first one is your preferential trade agreement. Preferential trade agreement is it requires the lowest level of commitment. Like here, the total trade barriers are eliminated between the countries. We doing trade with Bangladesh, we doing trade with Nepal is something which we do. Then there is a free trade agreement. Free trade agreement is like all trade barriers is eliminated among the members. But when it comes to dealing with non-members, the trade policies they have to take into consideration the external rules. Then there is something called as customs union, where there are member countries who remove the trade barriers, who remove the customs that are being put on the commodities. Then there is something called as a common market. Common market is a type of trading agreement where members they remove all the internal trade barriers, they adopt all the common policies, and they deal with there is a dealing with movement of resources among them freely. There is an economic union where members eliminate the trade barriers among themselves. They adopt an external barrier. They allow free import and export of goods and commodities, and they use one currency only. There is something called as full integration, where there is a final level of trade agreement that happens between the people, between the countries. Oh, hey, what is the date today? 4th February, right? Yes. So this was all about your second unit. This much I had to cover in your second unit. I covered it. I'll be uploading notes if I found, and I'll be giving you your MCQs. Last evening only I had uploaded some of the MCQs. I have MCQs. I'll upload the same. Okay. So shall I leave the class now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.